Now in this viewpoint, I'm going to create a simple camera animation that would allow me to walk from this position to somewhere down this corridor. So to create that, I'll open the animator, and as part of the animator module, you have these different options at the top that let you translate, rotate, change color and transparency, and they all apply to your object animations. You can save a snapshot, and that is what we'll be using time and again to save the animation. And here you've got some options to play the animation. So to start creating your animations, you just select on this tool here, or you can just right click and add a scene. So it creates a scene now. Once the scene is created, what we can then do is we can go to our viewpoint, and I'll just pin this here for now. And in my scene, I can just call this walking animation. And within this animation, what we'll do is we can add a camera. So the program will allow you to add a blank camera. And with the blank camera added, if I go into this viewpoint here, I can start at this viewpoint and I can tell the program that I want to capture a keyframe. So now it's going to capture this location of the camera at the time 00. So now what I can tell Navisworks is that after 10 seconds, I want my camera to be at another location. So if I want my camera to be at another location, what I can do is I can activate the walk tool. And with the walk tool active, I'll also turn on the gravity option. So it takes the effect of gravity into account, and it'll also flag for any collision so that I don't run through the doors. It'll prevent that from happening, because when you collide with the door, it'll stop your walk tool at that point. So after 10 seconds, what I want to do is I want to walk along this corridor, and let's suppose I want to reach this position. So at this position, I will capture another keyframe. So the camera animation then advances, and you can see that it shows up with a green color. Now let's suppose in the next 10 seconds, I want to go down to this point. I could do that as well. You can see how it's jumping up and down the furniture, and I can capture this keyframe as well. So going from 0 to 20, it will take you to this point. And keep in mind that in some cases, it may take the shortest path between the 2 points. So for example, if I create the animation of the door opening, and depending on how I capture my keyframes, it may actually entirely not walk through the door and actually walk through the wall. So if you want to avoid that, you may have to capture a few more keyframes and more explicitly tell it to walk through the door. So after 20 seconds, I come to this position, and that's basically how you create a camera animation. So if I were to play this animation, I can hit stop and I can hit the play button. So it starts at that viewpoint from wherever you are in the model, and it walks you through that animation. So it's taking you to the second keyframe now, and now it's going to continue walking. So it walks, and you can see how the camera turns to face the door and stops at the 20th second. So that's the first type of animation that we've created with the animator, which is basically a camera animation. To do the next type of animation, which is an object animation, you first need to have some objects selected in the model. So to do that, from the walk tool, I'll switch back to my select tool. And with that selected, I can select the door and this little window opening that I see as part of the door. And what you can do after you select them is you can right click on the animation and say that you want an animation set created from the current selection. Now what you could also do instead is, if you have any kind of sets created within Navisworks, so sets will allow you to, it acts like a view filter. It will allow you to filter out items that have a certain set of common properties within them. So if you've created those kind of sets in your Navisworks model, or you can even export and import them. So depending on how you have those sets established in the model, you could also add those sets as part of your animation. So in this case, what we'll do is we'll just add the animation set from our current selection, and I can just call this something like door opening. Right, so we've created our second type of animation, which is an object animation. And again, I can save a viewpoint to begin with. So at the 20th second, it has saved my viewpoint. So within the next 5 seconds, I want this door to open. So I'll advance my time first to 25 seconds. And now these options become active. When you had the camera animation, these options were not available. But as soon as you have an object animation, these options become available because now you can translate, rotate, or scale the object, change its color, or change its transparency. So with the rotate option selected, it gives you this kind of an axis to allow you to rotate that object. So it defaults to the center position of the door. Now this is also going to be the pivot point. So if you have something like a revolving door, then this current position is fine because it's going to pivot about that center point. But for this kind of a door, you may have to move the axis by just grabbing it. So you just hover over it. The pointer changes to something like a hand icon, and you place your axis in this way and line it up. Now, in some cases, what you may also have to do, and I'm holding the shift and the middle mouse wheel now to orbit. And in some cases, what you may also have to do is you may have to line up the axis or just rotate this axis without rotating the object. Now, if I were to click on this plane, it will actually rotate the door about this vertical axis. If you want to rotate the grid here itself and not rotate the object, you can hold the control key and then move, translate the axis or rotate it. Okay, so hold the control key if you just want to control the axis. If you want to move the object itself, then you can just use the left mouse click and do that. So that is what we'll do next. We'll just hover over the plane. It moves to a, it highlights that plane. And now I can just press the key and hold it, and I can animate the door opening. So now the door opening is animated, and what I can tell Navisworks now is to capture the keyframe again. Okay, so it'll remember the last position you had used to view the door, and it'll go back to that. So when I was manipulating the axis and positioning it, I was just orbiting around it like I normally would. And once I have it set up correctly, you can then just do that manipulation and capture the keyframe, and it will bring you back to the original viewpoint that you had used for your animation. So with this done, what I'll do is I'll turn off my rotate animation set again. I can deselect my door, and let's play that animation from the start to the end again. So I'll hit play. So again, it takes me to the viewpoint, and I can now walk through the model. It crosses the second time or keyframe. Continue walking to the next keyframe. It will stop here, and now you can see the door open. So you can create these kind of animations fairly quickly using the animator tool. Right, so let's save what we've done so far. I'll just save this to the desktop. What I can now do is I can continue walking. So I can switch back to the camera animation. And now suppose I want to walk through the door. So with the camera animation selected, what we can do is we can again capture a keyframe at this point, so it then stitches the camera animation and extends it further. And let's say in the next 5 seconds I want to cross the door, so I can again activate the walk tool, make sure my collision and gravity are on, and with the walk tool selected, what we'll do is we'll actually just rotate. And it doesn't matter how you get to that point, because Navisworks will try to find the smallest path to that point. So 5 seconds may actually be a little short for it to walk through the door. So let me just turn off collision, walk through that door, and I can capture this keyframe again. Okay, so now if I were to play the animation, say from the 20th second forward, we'll see the door open, and then it will walk through the door inside the space. Okay, so you can continue this kind of an animation and work together with the camera and the object animation. You could also set it up in a way that as you approach the door opens. What we saw happening here is we actually pause at the door and then the door opens. But it could be set up in a way where as you approach the door opens and you walk through it. So that can also be done. Right? What you can also do with your animations is you can choose which animations are active or inactive at any given point. So that can be done here. And what you could also do is you could set up a ping pong for your animation. So what will happen is it will go all the way from the start to the end and then walk backward from the end to the start. So if you were to turn on the ping pong, what you'll see happening is the animation going in this way. So we've seen all this before. It's walking through that animation. We should see the door open now. And we'll now see our camera approach the door, enter inside, and then walk back. So you're doing a ping pong animation, so it's going, and we did not set up a ping pong for the door closing, so that's why the door stays open for that duration and then starts walking back. The third type of animation that you can create is a section animation, and to see that in action, we can, on the viewpoint tab, enable sectioning, and you can see that there is a section here. I'll turn on my select tool again. We can see that there is a section here that is cutting part of the model. I can turn the move option on, and now I can see the grid or the axis that corresponds to this section. So to create a section animation, we could start with a section plane that shows up in this way, and we could line it up with any one of the axes that are available over here. So there are options to manipulate that section that you see here, and what we'll do to create our section animation is just right click and go to add section plane. So I can call this section plane, or let's create a new animation scene here. So I'll just delete this and we'll add a new scene and call this section plane animation. So we created the section plane animation, and now I can right click and add a section plane. Right, so I'll make my walking animation inactive. I'll make my section plane animation the active one. And what I can do is I can start by capturing with my section plane animation selected. I can capture a keyframe at time 0. And let's say I move it to 15 seconds. And now what I can do is I can move my section plane in this way to cut across the building. And after 15 seconds, let's suppose I want it to be positioned here, and I can capture my keyframe again. So now you see that a section animation shows up with a red color. So you've got three different colors that you'll see in this time scale: green denoting a camera animation, blue denoting an object animation, and red denoting a section animation. So in this way, I can create my animations. And now if I stop this animation and play it again, you should see that section being cut through the model as it runs through that animation. Okay, so the duration and the speed of that plane would depend on what time you have set up here and how far off the section positions are, the initial and final positions of your sections. Right, so those are the three types of animations you can work with within the animator tool.